Hey there and welcome back to NBA 2K18's My League mode. My name is Pete and today we complete another episode of our NBA 2K18 My League expansion series with the Louisville Legionnaires taking on the Atlanta Hawks in the Eastern Conference semifinals. Now, the Hawks have advanced after a tough 7-game series against the Nets. They were down 3-1 at one point, but they managed to turn things around and decide the series in their favor. Meanwhile, the Legionnaires had a slightly easier path. They swept their way over the Celtics and into the next round, where I would also once again call them the favorites, because we already met the Hawks 3 times in the regular season, and all 3 games resulted in decisive victories for Louisville. Not only did the Legionnaires always win at least by double digits, but 2 of the games were actually won with a 44 and a 45-point margin, so I think it's safe to say the Legionnaires are expected to advance once again. Before we jump into the first game, however, let's have a look at what the Hawks are throwing at us, and looking at their lineups, we can immediately see the Hawks are lacking a true superstar. While they have no glaring weaknesses in their starting 5, they also don't really have anyone who I would consider the #1 go-to option on every possession, so it will definitely remain interesting to see who steps up and takes the lead on the Hawks roster. Running the point for the Hawks, that will be sophomore Brandon Strong, who started out as a defensive specialist, but who has developed into a somewhat capable slasher and a solid shooter. However, Strong is not the tallest guy, and because he is still definitely more of a defensive-minded player, I think Dante Exum will be able to contain him for the most part. Now, the same might be true the other way around, but Exum has a size advantage, and then again, he's not one of our primary scoring options anyway. Speaking of primary scoring options, that will very likely be the role of Zach LaVine, who, at least in the backcourt, is probably Atlanta's most talented scorer. The same is true, however, for our shooting guard Josh Richardson, and this matchup could really play out either way. LaVine is a bit more athletic, so that could cause trouble for Richardson. At the same time, he is also not what I would call a great defender, which would then again play in our favor. Ultimately, I see no one with a clear edge here. Still, this matchup could be very important. At the small forward then, I would see us with a bit of an advantage. Taurean Prince will go up against Rodney Hood, and not only does Hood have a bit more size on him, but I would also call him slightly more versatile. Prince might have the edge athletically, but it remains to be seen how much of that he'll actually be able to utilize. And that now brings us down low, and once again, just like in the series against the Celtics, to the one position where we will very likely have the biggest advantage. Now, John Collins is definitely a talented player. He's athletic and he also has some length, but let's not kid ourselves here, he is no matchup for Anthony Davis. So expect a lot of our offense to once again go through AD, while the Hawks might actually be looking a lot for this guy, DeAndre Ayton. Inside, Ayton is definitely the #1 option, but going up against Mohamed Bamba, scoring is not going to come easy for him. Yes, he is a bit stronger and might even have the advantage in that matchup. Ultimately though, I don't think he's going to have that big of an edge, and all in all, our 3-0 record against the Hawks this season has shown that we are more than capable of dealing with this lineup. But enough with the speculation. Just like against the Celtics, we have home court advantage, so let's jump into the game and begin this Eastern Conference semifinal series, Legionnaires vs Hawks, who will be able to advance. Now, in the first quarter, this was actually a very competitive game. The Legionnaires go into the quarter break with a small 2-point lead, largely thanks to 12 points and 9 rebounds from Anthony Davis. Overall, the Legionnaires committed a few more turnovers than Atlanta, but they also shot the ball a bit better, and that was enough to take a small lead after 1. In the second quarter then, the game didn't really change significantly. The Legionnaires still a bit careless with the ball, but also with higher field goal percentage. Atlanta really only made their 3-pointers, but they also had quite a few lapses of their own. Anthony Davis meanwhile already got his scoring output up to 20 points at halftime, and in this first half he was, as expected, without a doubt the best player on the court. Going into the break then, the Legionnaires with a well-deserved 5-point lead, but the game of course far from decided yet. Things then got a bit clearer in quarter number 3, where the Legionnaires for the first time worked themselves up to a double-digit lead. Especially our big men fueled several big runs in this quarter. AD, Bamba and Bryce Johnson combined for 21 points in the third, and especially down low, Atlanta didn't really have an answer. At least not yet, because in quarter number 4 things would change. Despite being down by 11, Atlanta mounted a big comeback. LaVine scored 11, Schroeder scored 12 in the fourth, and all of a sudden the game was up for grabs again, and so we jump into the final seconds of this one with Louisville holding on to a narrow 2-point lead. Rodney Hood drives and draws the double team down low, gets the ball to Richardson, who goes up for the slam but gets fouled and is sent to the free throw line instead. 17 seconds remain on the clock and Richardson makes the first to give his team a 3-point lead. However, free throw number 2 is off, and with that Atlanta still has a chance to tie. Then as Schroeder pushes the ball down the court, Exum aggressively closes out the 3 but gets beaten, as Schroeder settles for the 2-point jumper. Being wide open, he makes the shot, but Ayton also commits a foul on the rebound. That means we now inbound the ball from the side, and of course you know who we're looking for. Our best free throw shooter Rodney Hood comes sprinting down the court, he gets the ball, and shortly after we see him at the line. And just like Richardson before, he makes his first, but he also calmly sinks the second, and with that the Legionnaires are again up by 3. Out of the following timeout then, Turian Prince inbounds the ball. It goes to Collins in the corner, who immediately wants to play give and go with Prince, but Rodney Hood is alert and steals the pass. And the Legionnaires manage to throw a few passes of their own to burn some time. Eventually then, Dante Exum gets fouled with 3.5 seconds left on the clock, and with a chance to put the game away. And the first free throw is good, and that gets the lead up to 4, so that might have been the nail in the coffin. To make extra sure though, he also sinks the second, and that puts the Legionnaires up by 5 and the game out of reach. Atlanta then does not score on their final possession, and so the Legionnaires take a hard-fought Game 1, 109 to 104. Our player of the game then, no surprise, Anthony Davis once again crushed the competition tonight, and he finished the game with 33 points and 15 rebounds in only 29 minutes. Yes, he could have played a bit more, but as you can see here, Bryce Johnson was also having a great night. He scored 18 off the bench, followed by Richardson 17. Exum meanwhile a versatile stat line with 11 points, 5 rebounds and 6 assists, and Mo Bamba showed his worth, especially on the defensive end, where he racked up 3 steals and 3 blocks to go along with 10 points and 8 rebounds. For the Hawks, Levine definitely filled that role as the primary scoring option. Both him and Dennis Schroeder came up big in the fourth quarter to keep their team in the game. Especially from deep, they hit a few very inconvenient shots, but ultimately, as you just saw, it was not enough to get the Game 1 victory. After the game then, a look around the league, and we once again start out west, where the Timberwolves and Mavericks have already played 2 games, and with both of them also already able to record a victory, so the series is currently tied at 1 game apiece. The Thunder meanwhile have gone up 2-0 against the Trailblazers, and they could once again definitely be in for a deep run. After kicking out the second seed Suns, they are my pick to win the West. Out east then, 2 first-round surprises meet up, as Kevin Durant and the Pacers are currently tied up after 2 games against the Pistons, despite the Pistons having a much easier road into the second round. So we'll see how things develop, but for now we'll go back to Louisville, where Game 2 against the Hawks is just about to begin. And the Legionnaires definitely looked a lot sharper in this one. No more stupid turnovers, instead the first double-digit lead after only 6 minutes. Josh Richardson with 12 points in the first quarter, AD with 6 points, 7 rebounds and 3 blocks. The Legionnaires outscoring the Hawks 38 to 21 in the first. Yes, it was a 17-point game after only 12 minutes, but with Atlanta shooting a miserable 27% from the field, this did not really come as a huge surprise. In the second quarter then, the teams were a bit more evenly matched. Atlanta found a bit of a rhythm with even scoring distribution across the team. They cut the lead down by 3 to 14 points at halftime, but the Legionnaires played solid basketball as well, and their most notable scorer in this quarter was Andre Flanders with 9. In the second half though, it remained the Legionnaires' game. After 3 quarters, the lead had grown again, this time to 21 points. Richardson was once again strong with 8 points in the third. Flanders and AD both added 5, while Atlanta continued to struggle. And well, the game also didn't have any surprises for us in store in the fourth quarter. Atlanta with a very minor comeback, but starting the quarter off down by 21, that was nothing that could endanger a Legionnaires victory here tonight. Flanders added a further 8 points this quarter, and this game ends as a fairly lopsided affair, with another victory for the Louisville Legionnaires. And in this game, our wings were the deciding factors. Andre Flanders leads the way with a fantastic stat line, 28 points, 8 rebounds, 5 assists, 4 steals, and all that while shooting 60% from the field. Richardson follows close behind with 24 points, but also with a ridiculous 10 turnovers. And then we have Davis with another big double-double with 23 points, 18 rebounds, and 4 rejections. Speaking of shot blocking, Mohamed Bamba was once again in a league of his own in that regard. He spiked away shots left and right to rack up 6 blocks tonight. He also once again added 3 steals, and was actually not too far away from a 5-by-5 game. On Atlanta's side then, the only guy that really convinced me tonight was John Collins. With 16 points and 7 rebounds, he not only leads his team in scoring, but is also one of the very few guys on the Hawks to shoot a respectable percentage. 2 games down, and we once again take a look at the other matchups, who have all played 3 already, and out west that has led to a 2-1 series lead for the Timberwolves, as well as to a commanding 3-0 lead for the Thunder. The 7th seed Pistons meanwhile continue to play excellent basketball. They beat the Pacers by 18 points in Game 3 to take a 2-1 lead in that series. For the Legionnaires meanwhile, it is now time to travel to Atlanta for the first time, where the Hawks are looking to get back on track with home court advantage on their side for the first time. But in the first quarter, it was once again all Louisville. Even more so than in the previous game, all signs were pointing towards a decisive blowout very early on. The Legionnaires held Atlanta to a horrific 24% field goal percentage while shooting 70% of their own. AD already scored 14 points in the first and Hood added 7, and Davis's 14 were actually 1 point more than Atlanta scored as a whole team in the first quarter, because after one they were already down by 20, 33-13. In quarter number 2 then, for a change, both teams played atrocious basketball. That of course didn't really help Atlanta to get back on track, and while their shooting numbers dipped down to an absolutely abysmal 14% from the field, the Legionnaires at least managed to shoot a borderline respectable 38%, and so even though Louisville committed way too many turnovers this quarter, their lead still grows to 31 points at halftime. In the third quarter then, Atlanta improved to a barely acceptable level of competitiveness. However, they were still shooting way below 40%, and their deficit was also still steadily increasing. Late in the third, we then saw the first Hawks player reach a double-digit scoring output, Shabazz Muhammad up to 11 points late in the quarter, but as you can see here, his team still not even up to 50. So the Hawks down by 38 at this point, and if you thought anything would change about this game in the fourth quarter, then I have some bad news for you. The game continued almost exactly as before. It really wasn't much more than a glorified exhibition game at this point. The final buzzer then probably a relief for the Hawks, as they suffer a 40-point loss at home and now have their backs against the wall as the Legionnaires take the third game in a row. Our top scorer for this one, once again Anthony Davis, who finished shooting 70% from the field for 26 points, 13 rebounds and 5 blocks. Rodney Hood then a bit less efficient, but still our second best scorer with 12, Richardson and Dennis both with 11, and as you can see here, with the game as lopsided as it was, Dennis saw a lot of playing time, while players like Bamba here for example saw some rest. He only got up to 23 minutes, but those were still good enough to record a 10-point, 10-rebound double-double. With his 11 points then, by the way, Shabazz Muhammad actually remained the only Hawks scorer in double digits, and even he had an abysmal shooting night. The rest of the team though even worse, and they would probably all like to forget this game as soon as possible. Going back to the playoff tree, we can now also see the first sweep of this round has been completed. The Thunder completely roll over the Trailblazers, and they are now the first team in the Western Conference Finals. Likely joining them there are the Minnesota Timberwolves, who just beat the Mavericks by 14 points in Game 4 to take a commanding 3-1 lead. Out east, meanwhile, the Pistons do the same. Their Game 4 against the Pacers a very close affair, but a narrow 1-point victory is enough to get them closer and closer to the Eastern Conference Finals. And that is of course also exactly where the Legionnaires are looking to go next. Especially with the results of the last 2 games, they should be hungry for more, so let's once again travel to Atlanta and see if they can complete the sweep. Atlanta, meanwhile, with a change to the starting lineup, where Shabazz Muhammad replaces Taurean Prince as the starting small forward. Now, it wasn't necessarily due to that change, but Atlanta managed to bounce back a bit from the last game. Both teams played a very even first quarter. We saw good shooting numbers from both sides. For the Hawks, Dennis Schroeder was the strongest with 8 points in the first, while the Legionnaires saw 12 from AD and 8 from Rodney Hood. After the first, the Legionnaires only with a 1-point lead, but in the second quarter they were building a bit more of an edge. We saw very good bench production from Bryce Johnson, who scored 10 points this quarter, while the Hawks fell behind a bit, mostly due to poor shooting and a few fouls too many. At halftime we can see the Legionnaires up by 9, but especially on defense the Hawks are looking solid. Unfortunately for the Hawks though, that would change in quarter number 3, as this was the quarter in which the Legionnaires started to run away with it. Behind a strong Rodney Hood with 11 points, they outscored the Hawks by 17, 34-17. Our threes were falling, the defense looked good, we committed very few fouls, and we even kept the turnovers to a minimum. So after 3, we see an almost familiar side at this point, a 26-point lead for Louisville, and with that, the sweep almost in their grasp. However, quarter number 4 started off with a small Hawks comeback. Zach LaVine exploded for 15 points in the fourth, and at times it even looked like the Hawks might have a chance of getting back into things. Sadly though, time was not on their side, and near the end the Legionnaires once again stepped their game up. In just a few minutes they went on a final devastating run, and that sealed the deal on a 17-point victory. A victory that, just like in the previous episode, sweeps the series and sees the Legionnaires advance to the Eastern Conference Finals for the second year in a row. Tonight's top scorer, then one we haven't seen here at the top for a long time. Rodney Hood shoots his way up to 30 points, including 5 3-pointers. Especially his third quarter performance played a big role in tonight's win, and I am definitely very happy to see that he hasn't fallen off entirely. Behind him then a few more familiar faces, AD with 24 and 14, Bryce Johnson with 18 points in 18 minutes off the bench, and Mo Bamba with another double-double and with strong defense as well. His final stat line: 13 points, 10 rebounds, 3 steals and 2 blocks. And with that, we head back to the playoff tree to take a look at what's next. And no surprises this time, all the series play out as expected. The Timberwolves beat the Mavericks in 5 games and will now face the Thunder in the Western Conference Finals. While out east, after LeBron, Kevin Durant also makes his exit. His Pacers lose to the Pistons in 5. And with that, our next round matchup is set. It will be the Louisville Legionnaires against the Detroit Pistons in the Eastern Conference Finals. And of course, that matchup is going to happen in the next episode. For today, we'll make the cut right here after 2 very convincing rounds by the Legionnaires. I have to say I have a very good feeling about the team this year. Yes, the Pistons have looked very strong as well, but I still think this could be the year that we see the Legionnaires in the finals for the very first time. And what do you think? Do you think the Pistons are too strong for us and we're once again going home after the Eastern Conference Finals? Or do you see the team advance? And if so, do you see the team win a championship this year? Or do you think we're still not quite there yet? So please let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and if you liked the episode, then I would be happy if you could also leave a thumbs up. And if that's not enough, then you can of course also support the channel further by either subscribing if you haven't already, or by supporting the Pete Complete Patreon. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.